Hello everybody, Brian Kelson with you again. Continuing my series, which has become rather convoluted, hasn't it? Romans through Philemon. And then I got sidetracked into Paul's conversion. But all of these features of Paul through the Acts period, including his conversion, all point to one conclusion and one conclusion only. That up until Acts 28, the Apostle Paul had absolutely no inkling of the dispensational truths of Ephesians and Colossians. And when we believe that Paul was the apostle of the Gentiles, and this obviously meant that he was the agent to reveal the truth for today, from his conversion onwards, ends up in the confusing catch cry of Romans through Philemon. And it is a confusion because the dispensational elements of Paul's writings force us to conclude, when we test things that differ, that what he wrote in one group of letters was the truth of the earthly purpose. This includes Galatians, Corinthians, Romans, Thessalonians. Corinthians, did I say? Yes. And when we look at his conversion, we found features that demonstrated that his conversion was under the jurisdiction, the auspices of that earthly program. Oh, but you might protest. Paul was a Jew. How else would he know? It was Christ talking to him. Well, I think the voice from heaven would have convinced him of that one. No, the elements of his conversion, that light brighter than the noonday sun, that voice from heaven, the identification of Jesus of Nazareth, the 3 days needing someone to lead him by the hand. And we found some fascinating Old Testament references to those features, all of which were totally focused on the restoration of Israel, that earthly program that will be established by that rejected Jesus of Nazareth Messiah, and which we found confirmed in Acts 13, where Paul said, "We preach to you the gospel, the glad tidings, that the promises made to the fathers he has so confirmed." Yes, Jesus in Paul's gospel was raised to Israel, and the Gentiles blessed with faithful Abraham. So we cannot ignore Paul's conversion and try and suggest that from that point on, he was gradually given the dispensational truths for today. The stumbling block for many, of course, is the fact that fundamental or redemptive truths occur in Paul's letters in the Acts period and in the post-Acts letters of Paul. But a dispensation, in its simplest definition, is a set of conditions. So if I have 2 baskets, and one is the Israel, earthly purpose, New Jerusalem, faithful Abraham, the trumpet return of Christ to the earth, the meeting in the clouds, all of those Israeli elements are in one basket. And the dispensational truths for today, being raised and seated in front of the Father's face in heavenly places, where our blessings, all spiritual, are found, and where also we have an inheritance, and where we shall also appear with him, according to Colossians chapter 3, That's that basket. But in both baskets we find, without faith it is impossible to please him, that faith brings forth obedient works, and that there is justification by faith. They're in both baskets. That doesn't mean that we have any justification to drag the dispensational truths in the basket given after Acts 28 back into the Acts period, because Paul was converted and he was a minister not only of that which he had heard and seen, the dispensational truths of Israel. We can't drag the post-Acts dispensational truths into Paul's words and mind. Consequently, our mid-Acts brethren have to invent that vaporous group of other people that Paul didn't mention in Romans, and Paul didn't mention in Galatians, and Paul didn't mention in Corinthians, which were the body members in the Acts period. Well, 1 Corinthians 12 is about supernatural gifts, not about Christ being the head of anything, and consequently, the 1 Corinthians 12 is not the church which is his body. It is a body used to demonstrate that the gifts of the time were synchronous and working together effectively. So now I want to go to the last book of Acts and show something else in Paul's life that confirms his ministry up to Acts 28 was Old Testament dispensational truth. And I shall read Acts 28 and we shall read it together, just a few verses, and I would remind you of some statements that God made to Abraham after we do that. In Acts 28, we're at the end of the book, and here we have an incident in the Apostle Paul that's telling us that even now, to this point, his ministry is Old Testament. His ministry is according to the promise that was given to the followers of the Lord who had believed into him. We shall find that and prove that. What for? To demonstrate that the Apostle Paul, all the way from his conversion till the end of the book, is still ministering under the auspices of the Old Testament dispensation. Nothing had progressed. Post-Acts Paul was not the agent of supernatural healing, now was he? But here, let's have a look. Acts 28 verse 1. And when they were escaped from the shipwreck, then they knew that the island was called Melita. And the barbarous people showed us no little kindness, for they kindled a fire and received us every one because of the present rain and because of the cold. And when Paul had gathered a bundle of sticks and laid them on the fire, there came a viper out of the heat and fastened on his hand. And when the barbarians saw the venomous beast hang on his hand, they said among themselves, no doubt, this man is a murderer, whom, though he hath escaped the sea, yet vengeance suffereth not to live. And he shook off the beast into the fire and felt no harm. Howbeit, they looked when he should have swollen or fallen down dead suddenly, but after they had looked a great while and saw no harm come to him, they changed their minds and said that he was a god. No, these are not God-fearing men among you, as in Acts 13, and they're not Israelites, are they? In the same quarters were possessions of the chief man of the island, whose name was Publius, who received us and lodged us 3 days courteously. If we don't notice 3 days popping up in Scripture and forgetting that they are significant, we're missing a few points here. Verse 8. And it came to pass that the father of Publius lay sick of a fever and of a bloody flux, to whom Paul entered in and prayed and laid his hands on him and healed him. So when this was done, others also which had diseases in the island came and were healed. Did anyone notice Paul preaching the gospel here? 1 Corinthians 15. For I delivered unto you that which I also received, how that Christ died for us. Any of that here at all? Oh, these evidential miracles. Is he performing a miracle here in front of Israelites who saw the sign and had the countersign, namely the Old Testament, which described what Messiah and his disciples would do? No, that's not the setting, is it? We just have people that are treating Paul courteously and those with him, and now the entire island, practically, is wiped out of every disease. Not just some, by the way, all. I had a friend in Australia who had leukemia, sadly, and he went to faith healers and said, oh, God hasn't given me the gift to heal leukemia. I don't see that in the New Testament. I see every kind of disease. So let's have a look at this just briefly and why. Again, to demonstrate that the Apostle Paul hasn't progressed away from all the special signs and wonders that he did as recorded back in Acts, 18 or 19? He sent his handkerchief and God did special miracles at the hand of Paul. Oh, well, if he's progressing into the truth for today, maybe they're fading away like the Old Testament dispensation. Nothing's fading away. There is no transmission. There is no transition. There is no progressive revelation in Paul. In fact, Romans was one of the last books written in the Acts period by the man, and is full of Old Testament prophecy and promise. It shouldn't have any if the erroneous conception that Paul had this progressive revelation is true, but it isn't. Oh, so let's have a look here at all these miracles performed, all these healings performed through Paul on that island. In Mark 16, the Lord said this, verse 17, and these signs shall follow them that believe. In my name they shall cast out devils, they shall speak with new tongues, they shall take up serpents, and if they drink any deadly thing it shall not hurt them. They shall lay hands on the sick, and they shall recover. This is not a feature of the present dispensation of the grace of God, but it's a feature in Paul all the way up to Acts 28. He said he spoke in tongues more than all of them when he wrote to the Corinthians. Special miracles. Here we are in Acts 28. No variation. No transmission. No gradual declension from the Old Testament ministry to the hidden God truth of the mystery. But wait, there's more. Way back in the beginning of in the beginning of Israel's history, the Lord said this in the call of Abram. I'll just throw that in so that I am aware of the name change. Verse 1, Now the Lord had said unto Abram, Get thee out of thy country, and from thy kindred, and from thy father's house, unto a land that I will show thee. And I will make of thee a great nation, and I will bless thee, and make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. And I will bless them that bless thee, and curse him that curseth thee. And in thee shall all families of the earth be blessed. Oh, remember, that's one of the key features in Paul regarding the justification by faith that included the Gentiles. But we're not here to go into that too much. What I want to show you is I will bless them that bless thee. Now back in Acts 28, what happened? The barbarous people on the island of Melita, or wherever the island was, comforted an Israelite, a messenger servant of Jesus of Nazareth, the Messiah. And there is a response from the Lord himself through Paul, that they had blessed Paul and they were in return blessed. And I believe that it is not irrelevant to reference Genesis chapter 12 in this matter. So the barbarous people in Acts 28 enjoyed a restoration and a cleansing of disease right throughout that island. No diminishing of the gifts that had been given to the Apostle Paul. No diminishing of the earthly ministry. So the barbarous people honoured us, writes Luke, with many honours, and when we departed, verse 10 of Acts 28, they laded us with such things as were necessary. Oh, the next verse has got 3 in it quite a bit, so I think I'll just throw it in before we move on from here. Verse 11, and after 3 months we departed in a ship of Alexandria, which had wintered in the isle, whose sign was Castor and Pollux, and landed at Syracuse. We tarried there 3 days. 3 months, 3 days. It's just amazing, isn't it? The stamp upon the ministry of Paul in all things Jewish, all the way to Acts 28. Well, this is a shorter video today. I really wanted to emphasise or preempt any criticism that might say, oh well, doesn't Brian Kelson know that Paul was a Jew and all those elements of his conversion, as found in Acts chapter 9, were necessary for him to really be convinced that it was Jesus speaking to him from heaven with that voice and that blinding light? No, I'm perfectly aware that Paul was above his equals in his own nation and had learnt at the feet of Gamaliel. However, what we need to appreciate from Paul's conversion is that it did not indicate any change in dispensation. All those features confirm that Paul was converted as an Israelite under the terms of the Old Testament dispensation of the kingdom of heaven on the earth. So, next video I'm hoping to get and conclude in Romans 9 through 11 to demonstrate that Paul's conversion did in fact mirror the very set of conditions, the very dispensational elements that existed in his life and in the life of Israel during the Acts period. So I look forward to that. I hope you do too. And thank you for participating in this very brief interlude about the gifts on Acts 28. Let us, as all true Bereans, search and see if these things are so.